ever seen a villain get flawed and feel your soul heal a little? Whether it's justice served cold or karma, anime knows how to make a beatdown feel personal. So today we're looking at the most satisfying villain defeats in anime. Starting off the list with Accelerator's defeat in a certain scientific railgun S. That's one of those shut the hell up moments on every level. After everything this man has done to our heroes, we wanted someone to humble him, and that someone turns out to be Thoma Gamijo, a completely normal guy whose only power is his right hand, the Imagine Breaker, which can cancel out any supernatural ability. Accelerator thinks he's untouchable, a literal genius level Esper who's never lost. But when Thoma decks him over and over, yelling about the value of life and the pain he's caused, I absolutely loved how Accelerator got freaking bounced by that last punch. He had the plans, the power, the god complex, until Urahara sealed the deal. Moving on, we have the iconic downfall of Aizen, the man who thought he was god until Urahara showed up. You see, Bleach was never just Ichigo versus Aizen, it was always Urahara versus Aizen, two galaxy-brain legends playing 4D chess with the fate of the Soul Society as the board. Aizen had the plans, the power, the Hogyoku, and a philosophical TED talk ready for every fight. But when he finally fused with the Hogyoku and ascended into this untouchable godlike being, it only made his defeat more poetic. Sure, Ichigo played a vital part in Aizen's downfall, but Urahara turned out to be the real deal when he finally sealed him. Poor Aizen, losing to other geniuses. The guy who thought he knew everything got played at his own game. Beautiful. Let's talk about the moment Neferpito learned what true fear looks like, courtesy of Gone Freaks Unhinged Edition. Pito was no joke. As one of Meruem's royal guards in Hunter x Hunter, they had terrifying, creepy smiles, absurd nen, and enough power to make seasoned hunters sweat bullets. Remember, this is the same Pito who took out Kite like he was a tutorial-level NPC. So when Gon arrived to confront them, we all expected a fight. What we got was absolute annihilation. Gon basically sacrificed all hope for tomorrow just to throw hands today, and when he powered up, Pito, for the first time in the entire Chimera Ant arc, panicked. Gon erased Pito, obliterated, crushed, turned their body into pulp and their soul into regret. Crashing into the list is the Deep Sea King, who thought he was about to headline the apocalypse. This monster was cocky, and he had every right to be, since he was dropping heroes after heroes, no matter what their class was. And then Saitama showed up, dripping wet, zero drama, and all vibes. The man walked in like he'd just taken out the trash, realized he forgot the recycling, and came back annoyed. Meanwhile, Deep Sea King launched into the classic villain speech, raving about strength, domination, evolution, yada yada yada, completely unaware that his fishy reign was about to hit its expiration date. Saitama blinked, raised a fist, and with a punch so casual it could have been a yawn, he changed the weather. The rain stopped, the sky cleared. Deep Sea King exploded into sashimi. Dinner was served. Legend has it that it never rained there again, and the punch is still ripping through the universe.
みんなを助ける。なれるかよ。私はこんな未来を。
Joining this list is Overhaul. Overhaul's defeat in My Hero Academia was brutal, raw, and deeply satisfying in the most poetic way. This was a man who believed quirks were a disease, yet he used his own in the most twisted, monstrous way possible, until Deku broke through all of that. The fight was intense, with Deku pushing his body to the brink, using One for All at 100%, fueled by Eri's power. Overhaul thought he had all the pieces, control over Eri, fused with his lackeys, towering like a god. What he didn't account for was the rage of someone fighting for someone else. It was karma in its sharpest form.
死刑です。スラム育ちで体が頑丈なんだ。たとえ帝具を封じられてもな。腐ったやつとは違うんだよ。
But we have to talk about Prime Minister Honest, the greasy, gluttonous parasite who literally fed off the empire while the people starved. This man was the final boss of corruption. While heroes fell and entire cities burned, Honest stuffed his face and pulled the strings, all while hiding behind a child emperor like the world's slimiest puppet master. After a long bloody war and countless sacrifices, Honest's empire began to crumble. He beats the grease out of Honest and leaves him barely breathing, only for the revolutionary army to collect the leftovers and torture him to death off screen. Karma served in courses here. Sliding into corrupt noble territory, Viscus goes from smug to scorched in a matter of seconds. The sleaziest noble in all of S.H.I.E.L.D. Hero, this man walked around like he owned the kingdom, abusing demi-humans, hoarding power, and treating his own people like trash. In terms of strength, he wasn't that big of a threat in my opinion. His true weapons were cowardice, corruption, and a deep, unearned confidence that someone else would always clean up his mess. But when Naofumi finally exposed this crusty aristocrat for what he really was, it felt so satisfying. This man brainwashed believers and Maltese betrayal to justify killing not just Naofumi, but even the princesses. But surprise, Ren and Itsuki show up, alive and kicking, and Viscus suddenly starts sweating through his robes. Even then, he nearly overwhelms them, until Naofumi activates Shield of Wrath 3, Blood Sacrifice, a terrifying move that burns everything down, including Viscus's overinflated ego. You won't be missed, Viscus.
私の心から
Thought hallucinations were scary? Seras Victoria makes revenge look worse. See, Zorin was a real threat. Her powers were really creepy, and she could literally warp your mind, make you watch your own death on loop, and break even the toughest soldiers. And for a moment, we thought she got Seras, but then something in Seras snapped. This wasn't polite police girl Seras anymore. This was drag your face down a hallway like a human crayon Seras. She tears through Zorin's illusions, grabs her by the head, and proceeds to paint the corridor with her skull. Zorin realized she messed with the wrong bloodsucker mid-squish. You see it in her face. Oh, I'm dying. Violently. She wanted to break Seras' spirit, but all she did was unlock her final form. Call it a Mortal Kombat fatality. Call it anime therapy. But this was the moment Seras Victoria officially said, I'm done being effing nice.
次は
僕を食おうとしたんだ。仕方ないよね。
Sliding into one of the most cathartic beatdowns, we've got Jason, aka Yamori, aka the sick freak who thought torture was a personality trait. Whenever this man got screen time, we saw him torturing Kaneki, cracking his bones and breaking his mind. And poor Kaneki had no option but to endure it all. Jason made one fatal mistake by doing all of this. He broke the wrong bookworm. Because after days of non-stop torture, Kaneki completely flipped. Jason thought he was in control until Kaneki turned the tables and said, "Let's see how you like playing the counting game." What followed was pure ghoul justice. Jason got tossed around like a rag doll while Kaneki casually dissected his ego and his limbs. It was brutal and oh so satisfying. After all the pain he caused, watching Jason beg for mercy as Kaneki slowly peeled back his cruelty was the ultimate reversal. It's time for one of the biggest flexes. Team Daiguren versus the Anti-Spiral. See, Anti-Spiral was the villain. He had his own motives and wanted nobody in his way. And for a while, it looked like he had a point. It felt like he was outclassing everyone. But you see, you can't outclass an anime protagonist who has the power of friendship and love. Simon and Team Daiguren said, "Screw your multiversal depression," and summoned Super Tengen Topper Gurren Lagann, a mech so massive it makes entire galaxies look like spare buttons. And just when you think the fight can't get more absurd, Simon jumps out of his mech and straight up punches the Anti-Spiral in the face. Anti-Spiral lost everything. He lost the argument, the ideology, and the vibe. So next time when someone says you can't punch existential dread in the face, just show them Gurren Lagann, because Simon did and he won. Now might be a good time for you to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Thanks. Alright, back to the video. He thought he had it all under control. I'm talking about the Beast Titan. From the moment Zeke Yeager stepped onto the battlefield as the Beast Titan, he commanded it like a god amongst mortals, raining down boulders, wiping out entire squads, and delivering lectures like he already had victory in the palm of his hand. He was calm, smug, and utterly convinced of his superiority. Every move was part of his grand design. But then came Levi. There was no dramatic entrance, no warning, just a sudden blur of movement. One moment Zeke was standing tall, the next he was on the ground, torn apart with terrifying precision. Levi didn't scream or taunt, he didn't waste a single breath. He came in like a silent executioner, each slash of his blades fueled by vengeance and loss. Zeke never stood a chance. The fear hit Zeke harder than the blades, so for the first time he wasn't the predator, he was the prey. The defeat of the sibling demons Gyotaro and Daki in Demon Slayer Entertainment District arc wasn't just another flashy battle, it was heartbreak wrapped in blood, pain, and pure desperation. These two weren't your typical demons drunk on chaos. They were bound by something far more powerful: love twisted through suffering and survival. And that's what made their downfall so devastatingly poetic. When the fight began, Daki seemed like the main threat: elegant, vicious, untouchable, but just when victory seemed close, Gyotaro emerged from her body like a nightmare, flipping the entire battle on its head. The coordination between them, their shared lifeline, the chaos they unleashed, it pushed Tanjiro, Zenitsu, Inosuke, and even Tengen Uzui to the brink. Every slash, every scream felt like the Demon Slayers were being crushed under the weight of 2 lifetimes of pain. But when that final moment came, when Tanjiro, exhausted and bleeding, made that one desperate strike, and Zenitsu and Inosuke synchronized perfectly to sever both heads, it was victory soaked in tragedy. The screams, the ash, the silence, and then the truth. Their human pasts, the suffering they endured, the way Gyotaro reached for Daki's hand as they burnt away. It didn't feel like cheering, it felt like mourning. A reminder that not all demons were born evil, some were just broken.
ボロ雑巾にして耐えたのだ。
私の大切な部下に何をする。
クソ人間が見下してんじゃん。
Sliding in next, we've got one of the most cathartic roast sessions: Roy Mustang versus Envy in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I'd call it an execution. Mustang was pouring years of guilt, grief, and righteous fury into every snap. And Envy, that smug, manipulative monster who took Hughes away, they weren't ready. The way Mustang lit them up again and again was personal, it was brutal, and it was earned. The guy was cooking Envy alive while maintaining terrifying precision, and when the smoke started to clear, Envy's smugness had melted right off. Envy broke down afterwards, realizing the humans they mocked were more resilient, more honest, and more human than they'd ever be. Mustang may have spared them in the end, but let's be real, Envy was already burnt beyond recognition, inside and out. This was one of the most well-deserved burnouts.
そうだね。僕は化け物を狩る化け物。許せない。許せるはずがない。くそー、絶対にごめんだ。
Here's a loudmouth who calls himself rational and got deleted by teamwork and pettiness. Up next, we've got the moment everyone had been begging for: Regulus Corneus finally getting clapped in ReZero. And oh boy was it glorious. After running his mouth for what felt like decades, Mr. I'm the most rational man alive got a reality check so hard it broke the laws of physics, literally. The Sin Archbishop of Greed, who saw himself as the ultimate husband, untouchable and invincible, got outplayed in every way. Ever seen the cleanest tag team strategy? Meet Subaru and Emilia when they were up against this disgraceful character. And to add more fun to the beatdown, Reinhard joined the party and absolutely destroyed Regulus. Like, imagine jumping all the way from the moon to the earth just to serve justice and maybe look. Seeing Regulus getting dogpiled afterwards was the most satisfying moment for me in the entire series. Utsuro's defeat in Gintama wasn't just the end of a villain, it was the emotional collapse of centuries of pain, hatred, and immortality. Utsuro wasn't your average big bad. He was layered, tragic, and terrifying all at once. He didn't want to rule the world, he wanted to end it, to stop the cycle of life that had become his eternal curse. Throughout the final arc, his presence loomed like a shadow over everything. No matter how many times he was struck down, he came back, stronger, colder, emptier. It was as if the universe itself had given up on him, and in return, he wanted to erase it. When Utsuro finally fell, it wasn't just the sword that pierced him, it was the weight of the bonds he'd severed and the humanity he'd tried so hard to destroy. His death felt like a release, a bittersweet farewell to a man who no longer wanted to live. And in that quiet end, as the chaos faded, you couldn't help but feel not triumph, but sorrow. Because in defeating Utsuro, they weren't just saving the world, they were saying goodbye to their teacher, their past, and a broken soul who'd suffered too long.
もうお前は終わりだ。ここで死ね。互いの退屈しのぎになったじゃないか。
From smug mastermind to exposed fraud, Lightfall was a masterclass in downfall. After God knows how many episodes of outsmarting everyone and staying undercover, it all came crashing down in a single, delicious moment of checkmate. And man, if there was ever a villain you wanted to see in pain, it was Light. This guy spent the entire show playing judge, jury, and executioner without any remorse. He thought he was untouchable, outsmarting L and literally the world. But then, Nier enters the chat and destroys Light's whole career. He lost not just the battle, but the mask. Gone was the composed genius, and all that was left was a desperate, pathetic kid exposed in front of everyone he'd manipulated. And Ryuk, the one guy who never pretended to care, closes the book, literally. Light was humiliated, unmasked, and abandoned by the very god complex he built his identity on.
食らい尽くせベルゼビュート
バカなそんなバカな
無駄だよクレイマンお前は俺より弱い
やめろおい
ベルゼビュート
ラプラス君の言う通りだった君はいつも正しいな
Rolling up next, it's the moment Clayman found out he was just a mid-boss in Rimuru's story. For real, the man walked around like he was about to rewrite the power balance of the world, and then Rimuru, Veldora, and Shion collectively said, bro, sit down. What's funny is that Rimuru clearly told Clayman he'd give him a painless death, but proceeded to beat him down like Clayman owed him some rent. Rimuru wasn't even the only one clowning him. His own supposed trump card, Milim, had been faking the whole time. It was as if Clayman walked into a 4D chess match thinking he brought Uno cards. Satisfying doesn't even begin to cover this one. Clayman spent 2 seasons talking trash and pulling strings, and when his time finally came, it was priceless. What he got was a public beatdown that turned into a team-building exercise for Rimuru's crew.
さあホムラちゃん
Now, here's a villain who didn't get punched. He got spiritually wrecked. Kyubei's punishment is quiet, cruel, and deeply deserved. This smug little alien rodent manipulated middle school girls into soul-crushing magical contracts just to farm energy. So in this movie, Kyubei finally learns what it feels like to be powerless, and Homura makes sure he never forgets it. Homura takes control of the universe, crushes his entire system, and traps him in a new world where he's no longer the observer, he's now the prey. In the Homuverse, Kyubei is reduced to a mangy roadkill trailing after Homura like a cursed pet. His eyes are ringed with witch-like corruption, he's filthy, confused, and completely powerless. He looks like he hasn't showered in centuries, and Homura just dances around him, smiling like she's finally in control. It's quiet, it's cruel, it's genius. Homura finally made him feel something, and it was the worst defeat of all.
誰だって孤独だ。もう誰も他人を必要としない。そんな世界に飽きていた。なあ、どうなんだ、鴻上。
いやもう二度とごめんだね。
Next up is Shogo Makishima, the walking TED Talk of crime and chaos finally getting shut down. See, this man wasn't your average anime villain. The dude would quote Karma's murder, that's how crazy he was, and after playing chess with society itself, dodging the Sybil system's judgment and treating every rule like a joke, he finally hits the end of the road. Not by the system's hand, but by Kogami's own. That's exactly what makes his defeat so satisfying, you see. Kogami pulled the trigger out of his own will, out of rage, pain, and the desperate need to stop someone who shattered everything around him. Makishima limps away in the twilight like a fallen king, still trying to rewrite the world until that final, silent bang drops him. For a guy who preached about free will, dying by someone else's choice, not a machine's, was the perfect ending.
生きているのか。本物の悪魔かよ。
うろたえるな。所詮死にとかない。私が引導を渡してくれる。死にとかない。あんたたちはこんなところで。てめえをこの手でやれるとはいい土産話ができた。
Talk about the perfect ending. Eok Kujan's defeat was one of the most satisfying defeats in the history of anime. Okay, look, there are dumb anime villains, and then there's Eok, a walking disaster in a uniform. His superpower was sheer incompetence mixed with delusional arrogance. His greatest talent was making everything worse, whether it was waking up ancient weapons, firing on surrendering civilians, or just breathing in the wrong direction. This man managed to screw over both sides in the war, got multiple fan-favorite characters killed, and still walked around like he was the hero. So when Akihiro, Space Guts himself, finally crushes him, we couldn't be any happier. It was hilarious to see Eok trying to stop getting crushed using his arms. Like, bro, this isn't a sardine can, okay? Rest in pieces, Kujan. You were the villain nobody asked for, and the cautionary tale every mecha pilot should study.
どうした？これで終わりか。
所詮我々の敵ではなかったのだ。
この程度で俺を。
Sliding in like a sword through a tyrant. Next up is the time Trunks absolutely embarrassed Frieza in Dragon Ball Z. After dying, Frieza came back to Earth with his daddy. He pulled up to Earth thinking he'd get revenge and maybe flex a little bit before Goku showed up. The only problem with this whole setup was that he decided to show up the moment future Trunks revealed himself to our heroes. Before Frieza could even finish his monologue, Trunks went full Super Saiyan and chopped the dude up. He sliced Frieza in half, turning King Cold into scrap metal and didn't even break a sweat. This was the moment that solidified the torch being passed down from the Goku era to something new. And for fans watching, Trunks ending a saga's biggest villain in under 2 minutes was peak anime cinema.
なんだ。
ずっとお前を見張っておく。
よくやったな、鹿丸。
はあ。
俺の火の石、お前に託したぞ。
てめえ、何つけてんだよ。俺たち里を守ろうという強い意志だ。
Rolling in next is the moment every Naruto fan secretly cheered for the takedown of Hidan, the immortal trash talker of the Akatsuki. This man had the audacity to murder Asuma with a twisted smirk on his face. Instead of matching Hidan in brute force, Shikamaru outsmarted him every step of the way, luring him into the middle of a booby-trapped forest. Hidan dived into a deep pit, body shattered, screaming curses to a god that didn't answer. And then came the coldest line in the whole arc. The pathetic Lord Jashin, or whatever, isn't your god anymore. I am. Savage. Hidan might be this immortal being, but even he can't be saved from the consequences of fighting in Shikamaru's forest. Sure, Hidan couldn't die. Instead, he was buried alive for eternity, alone, powerless, forgotten. Cold justice was served by one of the most genius characters of the entire series.
Mo終わった。
じゃあ奴は一体誰と戦ってるんだ。幻覚。
じゃねえんじゃ餌が死ぬまで離さない。死にすら値しない。
Now we've got someone who wanted immortality and ended up trapped in his own nightmare. Let's talk about the human cockroach of Yu Yu Hakusho, Elder Doguro. This man just straight up refuses to die every time. After his brother bites it in the Dark Tournament, you'd think Elder would follow suit, right? But no, he crawls off, regenerating like a fleshy, smug tumor, only to pop back up later like an unflushable toilet problem. He reappears during the Chapter Black arc, hitching a ride with Sensui's crew. Still creepy, still immortal, and still hiding behind the bullies in the block. But this time, Kurama's had enough. So Kurama goes full dark mode and busts out the Sinning Tree, a demon plant that traps its victim in a never-ending hallucination of their worst fears. And for Elder Doguro, that means eternal mental torture. Elder Doguro wanted to live forever, and he got his wish, just not the way he'd hoped for. Now he's immortal in the most horrifying way possible, forever tormented, forever broken, and most importantly, finally out of everyone else's hair. Mahito played with fear for too long. Yuji returned it with interest. Let's talk about the moment Mahito got humbled at the hands of Itadori Yuji, the one he traumatized the most. For too long, this guy played God with other people's lives, treating humans like test subjects in a playground of suffering. From Junpei to Nanami, Mahito broke more hearts than any villain should be allowed. But the moment Yuji starts walking him down, stone-faced and silent, you can feel it's going down for Mahito. This isn't a battle anymore, it's an execution. Mahito tries every trick he knows, but it's over. He's not just outmatched, he's hunted. And when he screams for help like a scared child, it's poetic. Because for the first time, the curse born from humanity's fear of death feels that fear himself. Mahito's end really was some kind of spiritual therapy. Finally, we have the downfall of the so-called strongest creature in the world. The man ruled Wano with an iron fist and a fire-breathing dragon form, crushing samurai spirits and dousing hope for 20 years. He tanked every blow like it was nothing. Zoro's slashes, Law and Kid's awakenings, Yamato's defiance, he even laughed off Luffy's Gear 4. But when Luffy unlocked Gear 5, a ridiculous cartoonish godlike power, Kaido realized too late, this wasn't just another fight. He outlasted him. He broke through Kaido's belief that the world is cruel and unfair, that strength is everything. And when Luffy's final punch, a giant flaming fist from the sky sent Kaido crashing through the earth into the magma below. It was such an iconic moment for all One Piece fans who'd been praying for the downfall of this menace. The myth of Kaido's invincibility was buried right there and then. And with that, we wrap up our list of the most satisfying villain defeats in anime. There's no way we covered them all, is there? So drop your favorite villain defeat in the comments below. Catch you in the next one.